The mop handle splintered against the training mat as 10 elite female commandos circled the janitor like wolves around prey. You wanted entertainment. Wes Dalton's voice cut through their laughter, his weathered hand steadying into a stance that made the room fall silent. Then let me show you what real strength looks like. In 30 seconds, the mockery would turn to awe, the laughter to respect, and a broken man would remind them all why some warriors choose to hide in plain sight. Stay with me to discover how a single father pushing a mop became the most feared instructor these soldiers would ever face. Comment your city below. I want to see how far this story reaches. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead in Fort Braxton's training facility, casting harsh shadows across the polished floor that Wes Dalton had been mopping for the past 3 hours. His shoulders ached from the repetitive motion, but he kept his head down, focused on the wet circles his mop created on the hardwood. At 42, with graying temples and calloused hands that spoke of years of manual labor, he had learned that invisibility was sometimes the greatest gift a man could possess. "Hey, mop man!" The voice cracked like a whip across the gymnasium, followed by a chorus of feminine laughter. "You missed a spot." Wes didn't look up. He'd been cleaning this facility for 2 years now, long enough to know that acknowledging the taunts only made them worse. The female commando unit had been training here for the past 6 months, Elite Force 7, they called themselves. 10 of the military's finest women handpicked for their exceptional combat skills and unwavering determination. To them, he was furniture, something that existed in the background of their glory, no more significant than the punching bags hanging from the ceiling or the weights stacked against the wall. Private First Class Carmen Vasquez kicked her training bag with such force that it swung wildly, nearly knocking the bucket from Wes's grip as he passed. "Careful there, janitor," she said, her accent thick with mockery. "Wouldn't want you to throw out your back. Cleaning is such dangerous work." The other women laughed. Specialist Diana Chen shadowboxed near the mirrors, her movements precise and deadly. "Leave him alone, Carmen. Can't you see he's concentrating? It takes real skill to push a mop in circles all day." Wes's jaw tightened imperceptibly, but his movements never faltered. Round and round the mop went, erasing their footprints, their sweat, their presence from the floor, as if they had never been there at all. His daughter Lily would be waiting for him at home, homework spread across their small kitchen table, her 11-year-old eyes bright with stories about her day at school. That image kept him moving, kept him silent, kept him invisible. "You know what I heard?" Lance Corporal Jessica Park dropped from the pull-up bar landing with cat-like grace. "I heard our janitor here used to be somebody, used to fight or something. Can you imagine?" She walked closer, her boots clicking against the floor he'd just cleaned. "This guy fighting, he looks like he'd break if you breathed on him too hard." The room erupted in laughter again, but this time it was cut short by the sharp bark of Sergeant Major Patricia Redmond entering the facility. At 6 feet tall, with shoulders that could fill a doorway, Redmond commanded respect through presence alone. Her steel gray eyes swept the room, taking in the scene with military precision. "Ladies," she said, her voice carrying the weight of authority, "are we training or are we running a comedy club?" The commandos immediately snapped to attention, their mockery evaporating like morning mist, all except for one Private Riley Moore, the youngest of the group at 23, who had been quietly working the heavy bag in the corner throughout the entire exchange. She was the only one who hadn't laughed. The only one who had noticed the slight tremor in Wes's hands. When Jessica had gotten too close, the only one who had seen the way his stance had subtly shifted weight, redistributing in a way that suggested something more than mere discomfort. "Sergeant Major, what?" Carmen said, still standing at attention. "We were just having a bit of fun before." "Fun?" Redmond's eyebrow arched dangerously. "You want fun? How about we make things interesting then?" Her gaze fell on Wes, who had stopped mopping and stood perfectly still, water dripping from the mop head onto his worn work boots. "You, janitor, what's your name?" "Wes Dalton, ma'am," he replied quietly, his voice carrying an unexpected steadiness. "Mr. Dalton." Redmond smiled, but it wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of a predator who had just spotted something interesting. "My elite soldiers here seem to have excess energy. They think they're invincible, untouchable. How would you like to help me teach them a lesson in humility?" The room went silent. Even the air seemed to pause, waiting. "I'm just here to clean, Sergeant Major," Wes said, his grip tightening on the mop handle. "Come now." Redmond pressed, walking closer. "Surely a man who spends all day watching these warriors train has picked up a thing or two. Besides," she glanced at her soldiers, "my girls could use a confidence boost. Taking down a civilian should be child's play for them." "What do you say, one man against my 10 best? Just a friendly sparring session, for fun." The word fun dripped with sarcasm. This wasn't about training or lessons. This was about entertainment, about putting the hired help in his place, about reinforcing the hierarchy that kept men like Wes at the bottom and warriors like them at the top. "I don't think that's a good idea," Wes said softly. "Scared?" Vasquez called out, breaking formation, despite the breach in protocol. "Come on, Mop Man. We'll go easy on you. Promise." "Yeah," Chen added. "We'll even let you keep the mop as a weapon." More laughter. Even Redmond seemed amused. Only Riley remained silent, her dark eyes fixed on Wes with an intensity that suggested she saw something the others missed. "I'm not scared," Wes said, setting the mop carefully against the wall. "I just don't want anyone to get hurt." The laughter exploded, then loud and mocking. Jessica actually doubled over, holding her stomach. "He doesn't want us to get hurt." "Did you hear that? The janitor is worried about us?" "Mr. Dalton," Redmond said, her voice cutting through the noise, "I'm making this an official request. Consider it part of your duties. Unless, of course, you'd prefer to find employment elsewhere." The threat hung in the air like a blade. Wes needed this job. The pay wasn't much, but it kept a roof over Lily's head, food on their tablecloths, on her back. He couldn't afford to lose it, not with his history, not with the black marks on his record that made finding work nearly impossible. "When?" he asked quietly. "Tomorrow," Redmond replied, satisfaction creeping into her voice. "We're having an exhibition for the brass. They want to see what my girls can do. You'll be the warm-up act. Think of it as your contribution to national security." "Do I have a choice?" "There's always a choice, Mr. Dalton. You can participate or you can clean out your locker. Which will it be?" Wes looked around the room, taking in the eager faces of the Commandos, the cruel anticipation in their eyes. All except Riley, who had turned away, unable to watch what was unfolding. "I'll do it," he said finally. "But I have conditions." Redmond laughed. "You have conditions? You're hardly in a position to negotiate." "I won't fight angry," Wes continued, as if she hadn't spoken. "This is a demonstration, not a blood sport. The moment someone loses control, I walk. And my daughter doesn't hear about this. Ever." "Your daughter?" Park asked, genuine surprise in her voice. "You have a kid." "Lily," Wes said. And for the first time emotion crept into his voice, a fierce protectiveness that made several of the Commandos step back unconsciously. "She's 11. She thinks her dad is just a janitor who works hard to take care of her. I want to keep it that way." "Touching," Redmond said dryly. "Fine. Your conditions are accepted. Tomorrow, 1400 hours. Don't be late." As Wes picked up his mop and bucket to leave, Riley finally spoke up. "Sergeant Major, is this really necessary? The man is just trying to do his job." "Private Moore," Redmond's voice turned icy. "Are you questioning my judgment?" "No, ma'am. I just think—" "You're not paid to think private. You're paid to follow orders, and tomorrow your orders are to put this janitor in his place. All of you. Understood?" "Yes, Sergeant Major?" They responded in unison, though Riley's voice was noticeably quieter than the others. As Wes walked toward the exit, he passed close to Riley. Without looking at her, he said quietly, "Thank you for speaking up. Not many would have." "I'm sorry," she whispered back. "This isn't right." "Very little in life is," Wes replied, pushing open the door. "But we make do with what we have." The door closed behind him with a soft click, leaving the Commandos to their training and their anticipation. They had no idea what they had just set in motion, no understanding of the man they had chosen to humiliate. In their arrogance, they saw only a middle-aged janitor with tired eyes and worn clothes. They didn't see the scars hidden beneath his long sleeves, didn't know about the nightmares that still woke him at 3 a.m, didn't understand that some men became janitors not because they couldn't do anything else, but because they were trying to forget what they could do all too well. That night, Wes sat at the small kitchen table in his apartment watching Lily work through her math homework. Her tongue stuck out slightly when she concentrated just like her mother used to do. The resemblance was a knife in his heart every time he saw it, but it was a wound he welcomed. It kept Sarah's memory alive, kept her present in their lives, even though she'd been gone for 3 years now. "Dad," Lily said suddenly, looking up from her worksheet, "Katie's mom said she saw you at the military base today. She said you work with real soldiers." "I work near them," Wes corrected gently. "I clean the facilities they train in." "That's still cool," Lily said with the enthusiasm only a child could muster for something so mundane. "Maybe someday you could meet them, talk to them. Katie's mom said they're these super tough warrior women, like Wonder Woman." "Maybe," Wes said, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "Do you think they're brave, Dad?" "The soldiers," Wes considered the question carefully. "I think bravery comes in many forms, sweetheart. Sometimes the bravest thing a person can do is walk away from a fight." Lily wrinkled her nose. "That doesn't sound very brave." "No," Wes agreed, thinking of tomorrow, of what he would have to do, of what he would have to become again, even if just for a moment. "I suppose it doesn't." Later, after Lily had gone to bed, Wes stood in his small bedroom staring at the locked trunk beneath his bed. He hadn't opened it in 5 years, hadn't wanted to face what was inside. But tomorrow would require him to remember, if only to ensure he maintained enough control to keep his promise to not fight angry, to not let them see what he truly was, to protect them from the monster he had worked so hard to bury. With trembling hands, he pulled out the trunk and opened it. Inside, wrapped in old newspaper, lay the remnants of another life. A black belt worn and frayed at the edges. A photograph of him standing in a ring arm raised in victory blood streaming down his face, but smiling. Another photograph, this one of a different fight, a different outcome. His opponent on the ground not moving, never to move again. The headlines from the newspapers: "Underground fighter kills opponent in brutal match." "Former champion charged with manslaughter." "Fighter released after charges dropped, self-defense ruling." And beneath it all, a small pink ribbon, not from his fighting days, but from another battle entirely. The one he had lost when cancer took his first daughter, Emma, when she was only 7. The daughter from his first marriage, before he met Sarah, before Lily. The daughter whose death had driven him into the underground fighting circuit in the first place, seeking pain to match what he felt inside, seeking punishment for surviving, when she hadn't. He closed the trunk quickly, as if the memories might escape and contaminate the life he had built with Lily. Tomorrow, he would have to open doors he had locked for good reason. Tomorrow, he would have to show those arrogant commandos what real fighting looked like, but he would have to do it while maintaining the control that had taken him years to develop. They wanted to humiliate him, to use him as a prop in their show of superiority. They had no idea they were about to unleash something that should have stayed buried. The next morning came too quickly. Wes dropped Lily off at school, kissing her forehead and telling her he loved her just as he did every morning. She hugged him extra tight, as if sensing something was different, though she couldn't say what. "Be careful today, Dad," she said, her small face serious. "I'm just cleaning, sweetheart. How dangerous could that be?" She smiled, reassured, and ran off to join her friends. Wes watched her go, memorizing the bounce in her step, the way her backpack shifted with each movement, the sound of her laughter as she greeted her classmates. These were the things worth protecting, worth any humiliation, worth any pain. He arrived at Fort Braxton an hour before the exhibition was scheduled to begin. The parking lot was fuller than usual. Word had spread about the unusual demonstration. As he walked through the facility, he noticed the betting pool someone had started on a whiteboard in the break room. The odds were creative in their cruelty. Janitor lasts 30 seconds. 2-1. Janitor cries, 3-1. Janitor runs away, 5-1. Janitor lands a single hit, 101. The gymnasium had been transformed. Bleachers had been pulled out to accommodate the audience of military personnel who had come to watch. A regulation sparring mat had been placed in the center, surrounded by safety equipment that seemed more for show than actual use. No one expected this to last long enough for safety to become a concern. The Commandos were already there, warming up with the focused intensity of professional fighters. They wore their training gear, form-fitting athletic wear that showcased the muscles they had earned through years of dedicated training. Each movement was precise, powerful, a display of controlled violence waiting to be unleashed. Wes entered through the side door, still wearing his janitor's uniform. The gray coveralls were clean but worn, his name embroidered on the pocket in fading thread. He had considered changing into athletic wear but decided against it. Let them see him as they always had. It would make the lesson more effective. "There he is," Vasquez called out, bouncing on her toes like a boxer. "The man of the hour, you ready for this, mop man?" "As ready as I'll ever be," Wes replied evenly. Sergeant Major Redmond approached, her expression unreadable. "Mr. Dalton, I trust you understand the rules. This is a demonstration of combat techniques, light contact only. The moment you feel overwhelmed, you can tap out. No shame in admitting when you're beaten." "Understood?" Wes said. "Good. We'll start with one-on-one engagements. Each of my soldiers will have 2 minutes with you. If you're still standing after that, we'll move to multiple opponents. Questions?" "Just one," Wes said, his voice carrying across the now quiet gymnasium. "What happens if they tap out?" The question hung in the air for a moment before laughter exploded from the audience. Even some of the commandos chuckled. Only Riley remained stone-faced, standing apart from her unit, her arms crossed over her chest. "I suppose," Redmond said with amusement, "they would be doing push-ups until their arms fall off. But I wouldn't worry about that, Mr. Dalton. Shall we begin?" The audience settled into their seats as Wes walked to the center of the mat. He stood there alone, surrounded by warriors who saw him as nothing more than a punching bag with a pulse. They couldn't see the way his breathing had changed, becoming deeper and more controlled. They didn't notice how his stance had shifted subtly, weight perfectly balanced, ready to move in any direction. They were too busy seeing what they expected to see, a middle-aged janitor about to learn his place. "Who wants to go first?" Redmond asked her team. "I'll do it." Chen stepped forward, cracking her knuckles. "Let's get this over with. I've got actual training to do today." She moved onto the mat with the fluid grace of a dancer, if dancers were trained to break bones and disable opponents with surgical precision. She circled Wes, slowly assessing him like a predator, deciding where to strike first. "You can still back out," she offered, though her tone suggested she hoped he wouldn't. "No one would blame you." "I appreciate the concern," Wes replied, his eyes tracking her movement without his head turning. "But I made a commitment." "Your funeral." Chen shrugged, and then she moved. She was faster than most fighters Wes had encountered in his previous life. Her opening combination was textbook perfect, a feint with the left, followed by a right cross aimed at his solar plexus, designed to knock the wind out of him and end this quickly. It was a good strategy, well executed, but Wes wasn't where she expected him to be. He had moved at the last possible moment, a small shift of weight that carried him just outside her strike zone. Her fist passed through empty air, her momentum carrying her forward. As she passed, Wes placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, using her own force to guide her past him. To the audience, it looked like Chen had simply missed, thrown off balance by nerves or overconfidence. She spun quickly, eyes narrowing. "Lucky," she muttered, resetting her stance. She came at him again, this time with a series of kicks that would have been beautiful if they weren't meant to cause harm. High, low, middle, a pattern designed to overwhelm an opponent's defenses. But Wes moved like water flowing around her attacks rather than meeting them head-on. He never struck back, never took an aggressive stance. He simply wasn't where she aimed. Frustration crept into Chen's movements. She was one of the best fighters in her unit, had won numerous competitions, had never lost a sparring match to anyone below her rank. But this janitor, this nobody, was making her look like an amateur. Her attacks became wilder, more aggressive, fueled by embarrassment and anger. That's when Wes finally acted. As Chen threw a particularly vicious roundhouse kick, Wes stepped inside her guard. His hand touched her standing leg just behind the knee, a gentle touch, barely more than a brush, but perfectly placed. Her leg buckled, her balance completely destroyed. She fell backward, and Wes caught her before she hit the mat, lowering her down gently before stepping back. "Time," Redmond called, though only 90 seconds had passed. Chen got to her feet, her face flushed with embarrassment and confusion. "How did you—" "Next," Redmond interrupted, her eyes now fixed on Wes with a different kind of interest. Vasquez stepped up, her usual cocky demeanor replaced with focused determination. She had watched Chen's failure, had seen something that didn't make sense. No untrained civilian should have been able to do what Wes had just done. "You've had some training, Sas," she said, not a question, but a statement. "Everyone's had some training," Wes replied cryptically. Vasquez didn't waste time with testing strikes. She went straight for grappling, attempting to use her superior strength and training to take Wes to the ground where technique mattered less than raw power. She shot low, aiming to wrap her arms around his waist and drive him backward. But Wes sprawled at the perfect moment, his weight dropping onto her back, his arms controlling her shoulders. For a brief moment, he had her in a position where he could have applied a dozen different submissions. The audience, at least those who understood what they were seeing, gasped. But instead of capitalizing, Wes simply released her and stepped back, allowing her to regain her footing. "Why didn't you—" Vasquez started, confusion evident in her voice. "This is a demonstration," Wes reminded her, "not a fight." She came at him again, this time with a combination of strikes and takedown attempts that would have overwhelmed most opponents. But Wes moved with an economy of motion that spoke of years of training, of countless hours spent perfecting the art of combat. He redirected her energy, used her aggression against her, made her own strength, her weakness. When the 2 minutes were up, Vasquez was breathing hard sweat dripping down her face, while Wes looked as if he had been taking a casual stroll. One by one, the other commandos took their turns. Park tried to use her speed, launching lightning-fast combinations that Wes seemed to see coming before she threw them. Rodriguez attempted to overwhelm him with pure aggression, only to find herself constantly off balance, chasing shadows. Williams, the unit's submission specialist, couldn't seem to get a grip on him, his body always slipping away at the crucial moment like he was made of smoke. With each passing round, the atmosphere in the gymnasium changed. The laughter died away, replaced by murmurs of confusion, and from those who understood what they were witnessing, respect. This wasn't some fluke, some lucky civilian who had watched too many martial arts movies. This was something else entirely. Finally, it was Riley's turn. She had watched each of her teammates fail, had studied Wes's movements, had begun to understand what she was seeing. As she stepped onto the mat, she did something none of the others had done. She bowed. It was a small gesture, but Wes's eyes widened slightly in surprise. "You're not a janitor," she said quietly, so only he could hear. "I am exactly what I appear to be," Wes replied, returning her bow with equal respect. Their engagement was different from the others. Where the previous fights had been one-sided affairs with Wes, simply avoiding and redirecting this was a conversation. Riley didn't attack with anger or frustration. She moved with purpose, testing rather than trying to dominate. And Wes, recognizing her different approach, responded in kind. They moved across the mat in what looked more like a dance than a fight. When Riley threw a combination, Wes would demonstrate the counter, not by executing it fully, but by showing her where her openings were. When she attempted a throw, he would let her get close enough to feel where her leverage was wrong, then flow out of her grip like water. "You're teaching me," she said, wonder in her voice. "You're the first one willing to learn," Wes responded. When their time was up, Riley stepped back and bowed deeply. This time Wes's return bow was more than courtesy. It was acknowledgement of a warrior who had chosen wisdom over pride. "Enough games," Redmond announced, her voice cutting through the stunned silence. "All of you, together. Let's see how our janitor handles real pressure." The commandos looked at each other uncertainly. What had started as a joke, a cruel bit of entertainment, had become something else. They had all been beaten not through violence, but through superior skill demonstrated with restraint. Going at him together felt less like a demonstration and more like an assault. "That's an order," Redmond barked. Reluctantly, the commandos surrounded Wes, 10 elite soldiers against one middle-aged janitor. The odds that had seemed so ridiculous an hour ago now felt uncertain. "I want you to understand something," Wes said, his voice carrying to every corner of the gymnasium. "What you're about to experience isn't fighting. Fighting is what you do, trained, purposeful, controlled. What I learned, what I became, was something else. I've spent years trying to forget it, to bury it, to become someone my daughter could be proud of. But you've insisted on seeing it, so I'll show you. Once." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Wes's entire demeanor changed. The slightly stooped shoulders straightened. The tired eyes became sharp predatory. The hands that had pushed a mop for 2 years curved into shapes that suggested violence perfected through repetition. For the first time, the Commandos saw him clearly. Not a janitor playing at being a fighter, but a fighter who had chosen to become a janitor. They came at him together, their training taking over coordinating their attacks to cover each other's openings. It should have been overwhelming, 20 fists and feet, coming from every angle, no room to dodge, no space to breathe. But Wes wasn't trying to dodge anymore. He moved through them like a force of nature. Not with the careful restraint he had shown before, but with an efficiency that was terrifying in its precision. He didn't hurt them. He could have easily, but he didn't. Instead, he demonstrated how easily he could have. A palm strike that stopped an inch from a throat. An elbow that paused just before it would have shattered a nose. A knee that halted right where it would have broken ribs. Each commando found herself neutralized, not through pain, but through the knowledge of pain avoided. He put them on the ground gently, almost tenderly, but each knew that gentleness was a choice, not a limitation. In less than a minute, all 10 were down, not injured, but defeated, sitting or kneeling on the mat, staring at him with a mixture of awe and fear. The gymnasium was silent. Even breathing seemed too loud. Wes stood in the center of the mat, surrounded by the commandos he had just demolished without throwing a single harmful strike. His chest rose and fell, steadily controlled as if what had just happened had required no effort at all. Strength, he said, his voice filling the silence, isn't measured by how hard you hit, but by how much you choose not to. He looked at each of them in turn, his gaze stopping on Riley, who was watching him with tears in her eyes, though whether from fear or something else he couldn't tell. You wanted to see what I am, he continued. Now you have. But understand this, what you saw was restraint. What you saw was choice. Every day I choose to push a mop instead of throwing punches. Every day I choose to be the man my daughter needs instead of the monster I became. That's not weakness. That's the hardest fight I've ever faced, and it's one I have to win every single day. He turned to Redmond, who stood frozen at the edge of the mat. Are we done here? She nodded, unable to speak. Wes walked to the corner where he had left his mop and bucket. He picked them up with the same care he might have shown handling weapons. As he moved toward the door, the commandos slowly got to their feet, none of them able to meet his eyes. Mr. Dalton, Riley called out. He paused, turning back. She stood at attention and saluted him. One by one, the other commandos did the same. Even Redmond, after a moment's hesitation, raised her hand to her brow. Wes didn't return the salute. Instead, he nodded once, acknowledging something that went beyond military protocol. Then he pushed open the door and left, returning to his work, to his invisibility, to the life he had chosen over the one that had chosen him. Behind him, the gymnasium remained silent for long minutes after he was gone. The commandos stood on the mat, each processing what they had witnessed in their own way. They had asked for entertainment and had received education. They had sought to humiliate and had been humbled. They had thought they were warriors until they met someone who had gone so far into the warrior's path that he had come out the other side choosing peace, not from weakness, but from a strength they were only beginning to understand. The gymnasium door had barely closed behind Wes when Riley pushed through it, following him into the hallway. Her footsteps echoed against the concrete walls as she caught up to him near the janitor's closet where he stored his supplies. Mr. Dalton, wait, she called out, her voice still shaky from what she had witnessed. Wes paused, his hand on the closet door. He didn't turn around immediately, taking a moment to reassemble the mask of the simple janitor he needed to be. When he finally faced her, his expression was carefully neutral. Private Moore, he said quietly, you should get back to your unit. They don't need me right now, Riley replied, moving closer. They're all still trying to figure out what just happened. Sergeant Major dismissed us for the day. I think she needs time to process it too. Wes opened the closet and began organizing his supplies with methodical precision, each movement deliberate and calming. The familiar routine helped ground him, pulling him back from the edge he'd been forced to approach. There's nothing to process, he said, not looking at her. It was just a demonstration. That wasn't just anything, Riley insisted. I've trained with Olympic athletes, special forces operators, martial arts masters from around the world. What you did in there, that was something else entirely. You could have destroyed us. But I didn't. Wes pulled out a fresh mop head, examining it as if it were the most interesting thing in the world. That's all that matters. Riley was quiet for a moment, watching him work. There was something deeply sad about seeing someone with such incredible skill reduced to cleaning floors, but she was beginning to understand it wasn't reduction at all. It was choice. "Who are you?" she asked finally. Before this, Wes's hand stilled. For a long moment, the only sound was the distant hum of the ventilation system. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "Someone who didn't know when to stop," he said. "Someone who thought strength meant never backing down, never showing mercy. Someone who learned too late that real strength is knowing when to walk away." What changed? Wes reached into his wallet and pulled out a small photograph worn soft from handling. He held it out to Riley, who took it gently. The image showed a young girl, maybe 7 years old, with bright eyes and a gap-toothed smile. She was wearing a pink ribbon in her hair and holding a stuffed elephant. "Emma," Wes said, his voice thick with emotion. "My first daughter, she died 8 years ago. Leukemia." Riley handed the photo back carefully, as if it were made of spun glass. "I'm sorry. After she died, I lost myself." Wes continued, tucking the photo away. "I started fighting in underground circuits, not for money or glory, just for the pain. I wanted to hurt as much on the outside as I did on the inside. I became very good at it, too good." He pulled the bucket from the closet, filling it with water from the utility sink. The mundane action seemed to give him strength to continue. "There was a fight in Phoenix. My opponent was young, cocky, thought he was invincible. He came at me hard, no defense, all offense. I should have just defended, let him tire himself out. But I was angry that day. Emma would have been 10, and I was angry at the world for continuing to spin without her." Riley remained silent, sensing this was something Wes needed to say, perhaps had needed to say for a long time. "I hit him once, just once, but with everything I had, everything I was. He went down and didn't get up. Died right there in the ring, 23 years old with his whole life ahead of him, and I took it away because I couldn't control my pain." "It was an accident," Riley said softly. "These things happen in fighting." "No." Wes shook his head firmly. "An accident is when you try to do one thing and another happens. I tried to hurt him, and I succeeded beyond measure. The fact that I didn't intend to kill him doesn't make me less responsible." He started pushing the bucket down the hallway, and Riley walked beside him, matching his pace. "The charges were dropped," Wes continued. "Self-defense, they said. But I knew better. I knew what I had become, so I stopped. Walked away from fighting completely. Met Sarah a year later, had Lily tried to build something good from the ashes of what I'd destroyed." Sarah was Lily's mother. "Yeah." Wes's expression softened. "She knew about my past, about Emma, about what I'd done. She loved me anyway. Said everyone deserved a second chance at redemption. When she died 3 years ago, car accident, I thought about going back to fighting. The pain was there again, familiar and terrible. But then I looked at Lily, and I knew I had to be better. For her." They had reached the main corridor now, where other personnel were passing by. Wes immediately shifted back into his janitor persona, shoulders, rounding movements becoming less precise. Riley noticed the transformation and marveled at it. He had made himself invisible through pure will, hiding in plain sight. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked. "Because you didn't laugh," Wes replied simply. "Back in the gym when they were mocking me, you didn't laugh. And when you stepped onto that mat, you bowed. Respect given freely is rare in this world, Private Moore. It deserves truth in return." They walked in companionable silence for a while, Wes occasionally stopping to mop a particularly dirty section of floor. Other soldiers passed by, some nodding to Riley, none of them giving Wes a second glance. The invisibility that had been thrust upon him by circumstance had become his shield, and he wielded it expertly. "Could you teach me?" Riley asked suddenly. Wes looked at her in surprise. "Teach you what you're already an elite soldier. What could a janitor possibly teach you?" "How to see," Riley said. "In that demonstration, you saw everything, every attack, every opening, every possibility. But more than that, you saw us. Our weaknesses, our strengths, our intentions. You knew what we were going to do before we did it." "That's not something that can be taught," Wes said carefully. "It comes from experience and the kind of experience required. It's not worth the cost." "But you could teach me control," Riley persisted. "How to hold back when every instinct says to press forward. how to choose mercy when victory is within reach. Wes stopped mopping and really looked at her for the first time. She was young, probably no older than the man he had killed all those years ago. But there was something in her eyes, a wisdom beyond her years, perhaps earned through her own trials. "Why would you want to learn that?" he asked. "Your job is to be a warrior. Warriors need to press forward to achieve victory." "Because I've been where you were," Riley said quietly. "Not exactly the same, but close enough. 2 years ago on a mission in Afghanistan, I had to make a choice. There was a combatant barely 16 years old pointing a rifle at my squad. I could have wounded him, could have found another way. But I didn't. I took the shot that ended everything for him." She paused, gathering herself. "It was ruled a clean kill. Necessary, they said, but I see his face every night. He was someone's son, maybe someone's brother, and I ended him because it was the tactically sound decision. I've been trying to figure out ever since how to be strong enough to make a different choice next time." Wes saw the pain in her eyes, recognized it as kin to his own. The weight of a life taken, justified or not, was a burden that never truly lifted. "I train on Saturdays," he said finally. "There's an old gym on Riverside Chen's Boxing. It's been closed for years, but I have a key. The owner was a friend, lets me use it to work out my demons. 5 a.m. If you're there, I'll teach you what I can. If you're not, we never had this conversation." Riley nodded, understanding the trust being offered. "I'll be there." As she turned to leave, Wes called after her. "Private Moore. What you did today, standing up for me when the others were laughing, that took courage. Don't lose that. The world needs people who will stand up for those who can't or won't stand up for themselves." She smiled, the expression transforming her serious face. "My father used to say something similar. He was a janitor too, actually, at my high school. I watched kids mock him for years, never knowing he had a PhD in engineering. He took that job to be close to me after my mom died, to make sure I got home safe every day. He taught me that dignity isn't about what others think of you, but about what you know of yourself." "Sounds like a wise man." "He was," Riley said. "He passed last year, cancer. I joined the military because I wanted to be strong, to never feel helpless again, like I did watching him fade away. But I'm starting to understand that the strength I was looking for isn't the kind they teach in basic training." She gave him a small salute, less formal than before, more personal. Then she was gone, leaving Wes alone with his mop and his thoughts. The rest of the day passed quietly. Word of what had happened in the gymnasium spread through the base like wildfire, but twisted in the telling as such stories do. By evening, the versions Wes overheard ranged from him being a former Navy SEAL to a disgraced MMA champion to a foreign spy maintaining cover. He found the rumors amusing in their absurdity, each one further from the truth than the last. When his shift ended, Wes drove to Lily's school to pick her up from aftercare. She was waiting by the door, backpack dragging on the ground, her face lighting up when she saw him. "Dad!" she exclaimed, running to hug him. "Mrs. Peterson said we're having a special assembly tomorrow. Some soldiers are coming to talk to us about careers in the military. Isn't that cool?" "Very cool." Wes agreed, though something cold settled in his stomach. "Did she say which soldiers?" "Some special unit from Fort Braxton. Elite Force something. Girl soldiers, I'm so excited. Maybe they'll be like the ones you work near." Wes kept his expression neutral as he helped her into the car. Of course it would be them. The universe had a sense of humor, it seemed. That evening, as he prepared dinner while Lily did homework, his phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, but he answered anyway. "Mr. Dalton." The voice was Sergeant Major Redmond's, though it lacked its usual commanding tone. "I hope I'm not interrupting your evening." "Not at all," Wes replied, though he moved to the living room where Lily couldn't overhear. "What can I do for you, Sergeant Major?" "I wanted to apologize." She said the words seemingly difficult for her. "What I did today was unprofessional and cruel. I let my ego override my judgment, and I put you in an impossible situation." "You gave me a choice," Wes said. "I made it. That's generous of you, but we both know it wasn't much of a choice." She paused. "I also wanted to ask, the school visit tomorrow. My team is scheduled to speak at Lincoln Elementary. I just found out that's where your daughter attends." Wes's grip tightened on the phone. "I see. I can assign a different unit if you prefer. After today, I would understand if you don't want us near your daughter." Will Private Moore be part of the presentation? Wes asked after a moment's thought. She's scheduled to lead it, actually. She's good with kids, relates to them well. Then it's fine, Wes said. Just please don't mention me. Lily doesn't need to know about what happened today. Of course. And Mr. Dalton. What you said today about choosing to be better about fighting that daily battle, it made an impression. On all of us, but especially on the younger soldiers. They needed to hear it. We all fight our own battles, Sergeant Major. Some are just more visible than others. After ending the call, Wes returned to the kitchen to find Lily watching him with curious eyes. Who was that, Dad? Someone from work, he said, returning to dinner preparation. Just sorting out a schedule conflict. You looked serious. Is everything okay? Wes looked at his daughter, at the concern in her young face, and felt the familiar surge of protective love that had kept him grounded these past years. Everything's perfect, sweetheart. Now how about you tell me about your day? As Lily launched into a story about her friend's birthday party plans, Wes let her voice wash over him, a reminder of what truly mattered. Tomorrow the Commandos would visit her school and his two worlds would briefly intersect. But tonight he was just Dad, and that was enough. Later that night, after Lily was asleep, Wes descended to the basement of their small house. It was an unfinished space, concrete floors, and exposed beams, but he had turned one corner into a makeshift training area. A heavy bag hung from a reinforced beam, its leather surface worn smooth in places from years of use. He stood before it in the dim light of a single bulb, not striking it, but simply placing his hands on its surface, feeling the familiar texture under his palms. This was his confession booth, his therapy, his constant reminder of what he was capable of and why he chose not to be. He began to move through forms, shadowboxing in slow motion, each technique performed with perfect precision but without aggression. It was meditation in movement, a way of honoring the fighter he had been while reinforcing his commitment to the man he had chosen to become. As he moved, he thought about Riley, about the pain she carried, about her request to learn. He had sworn never to teach again, never to pass on the violence that had consumed so much of his life. But perhaps what she needed wasn't to learn violence, but to learn how to transform it into something else, the way he had transformed his rage into protection, his strength into service. His phone buzzed with a text, Riley's number, which she must have gotten from the base directory. Thank you for today, for showing us what real strength looks like. See you Saturday. Wes deleted the message immediately. Old habits of leaving no traces died hard, but her words stayed with him. Real strength. He had spent so many years seeing his restraint as weakness, his choice to walk away as cowardice. Perhaps it was time to reframe that narrative, not just for himself, but for others who might be struggling with the same demons. Saturday morning came dark and cold winter, trying to establish its grip on the city. Wes arrived at Chen's boxing at 4:30 a.m., unlocking the rusty gate and flipping on the ancient lights that flickered before settling into a steady glow. The gym was a relic from another era, heavy bags patched with duct tape, a ring with ropes that had seen better days. Mirrors cracked but still functional. It smelled of old leather and sweat ghost scents from the thousands of fighters who had trained here over the decades. He was warming up when Riley arrived prompt at 5 a.m., dressed in simple workout clothes rather than her military gear. She looked around the gym with interest, taking in the faded posters of old fights, the trophy case with its dusty prizes. This place has history, she observed. Every punch ever thrown here left a mark. Wes agreed. Chen used to say the walls absorbed the dreams and disappointments of every fighter who walked through that door, made the place sacred in its way. Was Chen your trainer? One of them. He took me in when I was angry and young, tried to channel that anger into something productive. He succeeded for a while. When I quit fighting after Emma died, he was the only one who understood. Gave me a key, told me the gym would be here whenever I needed to remember or forget. Riley moved to the center of the floor, assuming a ready stance. So what do I need to learn? First, you need to unlearn, Wes said, walking around her slowly. Show me your strongest attack. Don't hold back. Riley hesitated for only a moment before launching into a combination that would have devastated most opponents. Her form was perfect, her speed impressive, her power evident in the way the air seemed to split around her strikes. Good, Wes said when she finished. Now show me your weakest attack. Riley frowned. My weakest? The attack you would use on a child who is annoying you. The gentlest touch you could manage while still making contact. Understanding dawned in her eyes. She repeated the combination, but this time her movements were soft, almost tender, barely disturbing the air. Now, Wes said, find the middle. Find the point where you have complete control over the outcome, where you could increase or decrease the force at will, even mid-strike. For the next hour, they worked on this concept, Wes guiding her through exercises designed to develop not physical strength, but conscious control. He taught her to see violence as a spectrum, rather than an on-off switch, to understand that true mastery meant being able to choose any point on that spectrum at will. In that mission, Riley said during a water break, with the young combatant, I only saw two choices, kill or be killed. But there were other options, weren't there? There are always other options, Wes confirmed. But seeing them requires stepping back from our training, from our instincts, from our fear. It requires us to be more than warriors. What do we become then? Wes considered the question. Guardians, perhaps? Protectors? Or maybe just humans who happen to know how to fight but choose not to unless absolutely necessary. They continued training Wes, showing her techniques he had learned not in any dojo, but in the spaces between violence and peace. How to redirect without harming to control, without dominating to win, without defeating. These were lessons written in the scar tissue of his soul, earned through mistakes that couldn't be undone. As the sun began to rise, sending dusty beams through the gym's dirty windows, Riley asked, "Do you ever miss it?" The fighting. Every day? Wes admitted. There's a simplicity to it, a purity. In the ring, everything makes sense. There's you, your opponent, and the truth that emerges between you. But that simplicity is a lie. Every fight has consequences that ripple outward, touching lives you never see. The young man I killed had a mother who still puts flowers on his grave. His girlfriend was pregnant. There's a child growing up without a father because I couldn't control my pain. How do you live with it? By being better. By choosing every day to be the man Emma would have been proud of, the father Lily needs, the person Sarah believed I could become. It's not redemption, some things can't be redeemed, but it's purpose. They were interrupted by the sound of the gym door opening. A group of young men entered, late teens or early 20s, wearing gang colors and attitudes that suggested trouble. Wes recognized the type kids who thought violence was the answer to whatever question life was asking. Gym's closed, Wes said calmly, moving to place himself between Riley and the newcomers. Doesn't look closed to me, old man, the leader said, his hand moving to his waistband where the outline of a weapon was visible. Looks like you're having a private party. Maybe we want to join. Riley started to move into a combat stance, but Wes touched her arm gently, stopping her. Chen's been closed for 5 years, Wes said conversationally. But you knew that, didn't you? You're Tommy's crew. He sent you here because he knew I'd be here. The leader's swagger faltered slightly. You know Tommy. I knew him when he was 12, stealing candy bars and thinking he was tough. Is he still running that chop shop on 23rd? Tommy doesn't run anything, another of the young men said. He's doing 15 to 20 upstate. I'm sorry to hear that, Wes said, and meant it. His mother must be heartbroken. She always hoped he'd turn things around. The tension in the room shifted, the immediate threat diminishing as the young men processed this unexpected response. You really knew Tommy? The leader asked, his hand moving away from his weapon. I tried to teach him years ago. He had potential, but he was too angry to listen, too much like I was at that age. Wes gestured to the gym around them. This place could have saved him like it saved me, but you can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved. The leader looked around, really seeing the gym for the first time. You're that fighter, the one Tommy talked about, said you killed a man with your bare hands. I did, Wes said simply. And it destroyed me. Destroyed him. Destroyed everyone who loved either of us. Violence doesn't make you strong, son. It makes you alone. The young men exchanged glances, uncertainty replacing aggression. We should go, one of them said quietly. As they turned to leave, Wes called out, The gym's here if you ever want to learn. Really learn, not just how to hurt people, but how to be strong. 5 a.m. Monday, Wednesday, Friday. No colors, no attitudes, just work. The leader paused at the door. Why would you offer that we came here to rob you? Because someone offered it to me once when I needed it, and because Tommy's mother still cries every Sunday at church, praying for someone to help the kids in the neighborhood find a better way. This is me trying to answer that prayer." After they left, Riley let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. That could have gone very differently. "But it didn't," Wes said, "because I chose to see them as more than threats. They're kids lost and angry looking for someone to show them they matter. Violence would have confirmed their worldview. Compassion might have planted a seed of something different. Will they come back to train? Probably not, but maybe. And maybe is better than never." As they prepared to leave, Riley said, "The assembly yesterday went well. Lily asked the best questions. She wanted to know if soldiers ever got scared and what they did when they missed their families. Very thoughtful for her age." Wes smiled. "She's had to grow up faster than most. Losing her mother, it changed her, made her more aware of the fragility of things. She's proud of you, you know. She told me her dad works harder than anyone she knows, that you're her hero. She said that she did. Also said you make the best pancakes in the world and that you never miss her school plays even when you have to work late." Wes felt tears prick his eyes. After everything he'd been, everything he'd done, his daughter saw him as a hero. Not for his ability to fight, but for his commitment to being present in her life. As they walked to their cars, Riley said, "Same time next week. If you want. But Riley, this isn't about becoming a better fighter. You're already one of the best I've seen. This is about becoming a better person who happens to know how to fight." "I understand. That's exactly what I want." As Wes drove home, he thought about the strange turns life could take. Yesterday, he had been forced to reveal a part of himself he'd kept hidden for years. Today, he had begun teaching again, but teaching differently than before. He was no longer creating fighters, but helping warriors find their way back to humanity. When he arrived home, Lily was awake, sitting at the kitchen table with a bowl of cereal and a book. "You're up early, sweetheart," he said, kissing the top of her head. "I wanted to catch you before you left for work," she said. "Dad, the soldier who came to our school yesterday." "Private Moore, she said she knew you, said you were one of the good ones." Wes kept his expression neutral. "That was nice of her to say." "She seemed really cool, strong but nice, you know, like she could protect people but would rather help them." "That's a good way to be," Wes agreed. Lily looked up at him with those eyes that seemed to see too much sometimes. "Dad, were you ever anything besides a janitor?" The question hung in the air between them. Wes could feel the weight of truth pressing against his chest, wanting to be spoken. But looking at his daughter's innocent face, he knew some truths could wait. "I've been a lot of things, sweetheart," he said finally, "but the only thing that matters is that I'm your dad." She smiled, satisfied with that answer, and returned to her book. Wes started preparing breakfast, the familiar routine grounding him in the present. Outside, the sun was fully up, painting the kitchen in warm golden light. It was going to be a good day. The weeks that followed developed into a rhythm that Wes hadn't experienced in years. His Saturday morning sessions with Riley became a fixed point in his life, something he found himself looking forward to despite his initial reservations. She was a dedicated student, absorbing not just the physical techniques, but the philosophy behind them, the careful balance between capability and restraint that had taken him years of painful experience to understand. On this particular Saturday, 6 weeks after their first training session, Riley arrived at the gym with someone else. Wes recognized Carmen Vasquez immediately, though the cocky commando who had mocked him in the gymnasium looked different now, smaller somehow, her usual swagger replaced by something that looked almost like humility. "I hope you don't mind," Riley said quickly. "Carmen asked if she could come. She's been struggling with something and I thought maybe you could help." Wes studied Vasquez, who couldn't quite meet his eyes. The last time they'd been in the same room, she'd been calling him Mop Man and laughing at his expense. Now she stood in his sanctuary asking for something she couldn't quite name. "The gym is open to anyone willing to learn," Wes said finally. "But the same rules apply. No attitudes, no egos. You leave your rank at the door." "I understand," Carmen said, her voice lacking its usual edge. "I wanted to apologize, Mr. Dalton, for before, for the way I treated you. It was wrong." "Apology accepted," Wes said simply. "Now what are you really here for?" Carmen glanced at Riley, who nodded encouragingly. I killed someone. She said the words tumbling out like they'd been trapped behind a dam. 3 weeks ago, on a mission in Syria, intelligence said the building was full of hostiles. I breached, saw movement, fired. It was a kid, 14, maybe 15. He was holding a broom, not a weapon. I shot a kid holding a broom because I couldn't take the time to be sure. The gym fell silent except for the distant sound of traffic outside. Wes saw himself in her confession, recognized the weight that was crushing her from the inside out. The after-action report cleared me. Carmen continued, tears now flowing freely down her face. Said it was a righteous shoot given the circumstances. But I can't sleep. I see him every time I close my eyes. I see his mother finding him. I imagine his siblings wondering why he didn't come home. You want me to tell you it gets easier, Wes said gently. But it doesn't. It shouldn't. The day it becomes easy to live with taking a life is the day you've lost something essential. Then how do you survive it? Carmen asked desperately. You don't survive it, Wes replied. You carry it. You let it change you. You use it to become someone who makes different choices next time. And you find ways to honor the life you took by protecting others. He moved to the center of the gym, gesturing for both women to join him. Today we're going to work on something different. Not fighting, but seeing. Half of the mistakes we make in combat come from not truly seeing what's in front of us. We see threats instead of people, enemies instead of children, weapons instead of brooms. For the next 2 hours, he led them through exercises designed to slow down their perception to create space between stimulus and response. He taught them to breathe into that space, to use it to make conscious choices rather than trained reactions. Your training says to neutralize threats quickly, Wes explained as they worked. But that training assumes you can accurately identify threats in a split second. The truth is, sometimes you can't. Sometimes you need to risk your own safety to be certain you're not about to destroy an innocent life. But that could get us killed, Carmen protested. Yes, Wes agreed. It could. That's the choice you have to make. Are you willing to risk your life to avoid taking an innocent one? If the answer is no, that's understandable. But you have to live with the consequences of that choice. As they were cooling down, the gym door opened again. This time it was Sergeant Major Redmond who entered, looking uncomfortable and out of place in civilian clothes. She stopped just inside the door, seeming unsure whether to proceed. Sergeant Major, Riley said, surprised. I'm not here as your Sergeant Major, Redmond said quickly. I'm here as Patricia, just Patricia. I heard about these sessions from Vasquez. I was wondering if I could observe. Wes studied her for a long moment. The woman who had tried to humiliate him, who had used her authority to force him into that demonstration, was asking permission to enter his space. The irony wasn't lost on him. You can participate or you can leave, he said. I don't do observers. Redmond nodded, moving to join the group. Then I'll participate. Why? Wes asked directly. Your career military, a leader of warriors. What could you possibly want from a janitor's Saturday morning gym session? Redmond was quiet for a moment, seeming to gather herself. Because I've been in the military for 22 years, and in all that time I've never seen anything like what you did in that gymnasium. Not the physical part, I've seen plenty of skilled fighters, but the control, the choice to not destroy when you could have. I've been thinking about it every day since. She paused, then continued. I've always believed that strength meant dominance, that victory required defeating your enemy completely. But watching you that day, seeing how you chose mercy when you had every right to choose revenge, it made me question everything I thought I knew about strength. And my father is dying, she added quietly, the words seemingly surprising her as they emerged. Pancreatic cancer, stage 4. The doctors say he has maybe 2 months. He was career military too, a hard man who taught me that showing weakness was the worst thing you could do. I've been strong my whole life, Mr. Dalton, but sitting next to his hospital bed watching him fade away, I realize I don't know how to be strong in any way that actually matters. The admission hung in the air, vulnerable and raw. Carmen and Riley exchanged glances, having never seen their commanding officer display anything approaching emotional vulnerability. Strength that matters, Wes repeated softly. That's not something you learn in basic training or officer candidate school. It's something you learn in hospital rooms and funeral homes in the moments when your world falls apart and you have to decide who you're going to be in the ruins. He walked over to an old equipment locker and pulled out a pair of worn boxing gloves, the leather cracked with age. These were my daughter Emma's. I bought them for her 7th birthday. She wanted to learn to fight like Daddy. We had exactly 3 lessons before she got too sick to continue. She died 2 months later. He handed the gloves to Redmond. Wear these today, not to fight, but to remember that everything we do, every choice we make ripples outward to touch lives we might never see. For the rest of the morning, Wes led the 3 women through exercises that had nothing to do with combat effectiveness and everything to do with human effectiveness. He taught them to find stillness in motion, to create space for compassion, even in conflict, to see opponents as people with their own stories and sorrows. As they were preparing to leave, Redmond said, "My unit is being deployed in 2 weeks. Afghanistan, 6-month rotation." "All of you?" Riley asked. "Everyone except Moore," Redmond replied. "She's been selected for a special training program. Advanced tactical instruction with a focus on minimizing civilian casualties. Apparently someone high up was impressed with her recent performance evaluations." Riley looked surprised. "I wasn't told about any selection." "You're being told now," Redmond said with a slight smile. "The program starts next month. It's a career-making opportunity." After Redmond and Vasquez left, Riley stayed behind to help Wes clean up the gym. "You arranged that, didn't you?" she said. "The training program." "I made a phone call," Wes admitted, "to someone who owed me a favor from a long time ago. You have the potential to be more than just another warrior, Riley. This program will give you the tools to make real change in how military operations are conducted." "Why would you do that for me?" "Because you remind me of someone I could have been if I'd made different choices earlier in my life. And because the military needs people like you, people who understand that true strength sometimes means choosing not to fight." Riley was quiet for a moment, then said, "Lily's birthday is next week, isn't it?" "She mentioned it at the school assembly." "Tuesday," Wes confirmed. "She'll be 12. "What does she want?" Wes smiled. "She wants to take a self-defense class. Says she wants to be strong like the soldiers who visited her school. I've been trying to figure out how to handle that." "You could teach her yourself." "That's the problem," Wes said. "I don't want her to learn what I know. I want her to learn something better, something that doesn't come from violence and pain." "Then teach her what you're teaching us," Riley suggested. "Not how to fight, but how to be strong without fighting." That afternoon, Wes picked up Lily from her friend's house where she'd spent the night. She was bubbling with excitement about something practically bouncing in her seat as he drove. "Dad, you'll never guess what happened," she exclaimed. "Sophie's mom knows Private Moore from the assembly. She said Private Moore teaches a kid's self-defense class at the community center. Can I sign up?" "Please, it's starting next week, and Sophie's going too, and her mom said she could drive us both if you're working." Wes glanced at his daughter's eager face in the rearview mirror. The universe, it seemed, had its own plans. "We'll see," he said, though he already knew he'd say yes. Riley had clearly been busy. That evening, as Lily did homework and Wes prepared dinner, his phone rang. The number was unfamiliar international. "Mr. Dalton." The voice was male-accented formal. "My name is Hiroshi Yamamoto. I represent the International Combat Sports Federation." Wes's blood ran cold. He hadn't heard from anyone in that world for years. "I'm not interested in whatever you're offering." "Please just hear me out," Yamamoto said quickly. "We're not asking you to fight. We're asking you to speak. We're organizing a symposium on combat sports safety and ethics. Your incident in Phoenix has become a case study in our training programs. We'd like you to share your perspective to help young fighters understand the real consequences of uncontrolled violence." "I'm just a janitor," Wes said automatically. "I don't do speaking engagements." "We know what you are now, Mr. Dalton. We also know what you were. Your story could save lives. Please, at least consider it." Wes was about to refuse when Lily called from the living room. "Dad, there's something on TV about a fighter who died. They're saying it could have been prevented." He looked toward his daughter, then back at the phone. Everything was connected, it seemed. Every choice, every moment, every life touched by violence or saved from it. "Send me the information," he said finally. "I'll think about it." After dinner, as Lily got ready for bed, she asked, "Dad, why do people fight? I mean, really fight, not just argue." Wes sat on the edge of her bed, considering his answer. Sometimes people fight because they're scared, sometimes because they're angry, sometimes because they don't know any other way to be heard. "But you don't fight," Lily observed, "even when people are mean to you, like that time at the grocery store when that man yelled at you for being in his way." "Fighting doesn't solve problems, sweetheart. It just creates new ones." "But what if someone tries to hurt me? Should I fight then?" "You should protect yourself," Wes said carefully. "But protection doesn't always mean fighting. Sometimes it means running. Sometimes it means calling for help. Sometimes it means using your words to de-escalate a situation." "Private Moore said something similar at the assembly," Lily said. "She said the best fighters are the ones who never have to fight." "Private Moore sounds very wise." "Dad," Lily's voice grew smaller, "do you think Mom would be proud of who I'm becoming?" Wes felt his throat tighten. "I know she would be. She is proud wherever she is." "I miss her." "I miss her too, sweetheart. Every day." "But we're okay, right?" "You and me." "We're more than okay," Wes assured her. "We're family, and family takes care of each other no matter what." After Lily fell asleep, Wes stood in her doorway for a long moment, watching her breathe. She looked so much like Sarah when she slept peaceful and unguarded. He thought about the symposium invitation, about the opportunity to maybe prevent other children from losing their parents to violence, other parents from losing their children to rage. He walked quietly to his bedroom and opened his laptop, something he rarely did. The email from Yamamoto was already waiting, detailed and professional. The symposium was in 3 months in Las Vegas, of all places, the city where he'd had some of his biggest victories and suffered some of his greatest defeats. They were offering to cover all expenses, plus a speaking fee that would pay for Lily's college textbooks for a year. But it wasn't about the money. It was about the platform, the chance to speak to young fighters who were where he had been angry and invincible, and unaware of how quickly invincibility could turn to tragedy. He began typing a response, then stopped. This wasn't a decision to make alone. He picked up his phone and called Riley. "I got an interesting offer today," he said when she answered. "A chance to speak at a combat sports symposium about what happened in Phoenix, about the consequences of uncontrolled violence." "That sounds like an important opportunity," Riley said carefully, "but also potentially painful." "Everything important is painful," Wes replied. "I'm thinking about accepting, but it would mean being public about my past. Lily would eventually find out. Everyone would." "Have you considered that maybe it's time?" Riley suggested. "You've been hiding for years, Wes, not from the law or from justice, but from yourself. Maybe stepping into the light, owning your story completely is the next step in your journey. And if Lily is ashamed of me, if she can't look at me the same way once she knows what I've done, then you'll deal with that together," Riley said firmly. "But I think you're underestimating her. She's stronger than you think, and she loves you more than you know. Children have an amazing capacity to understand that people are complicated, that someone can do bad things and still be good." After ending the call, Wes sat in the darkness of his room, wrestling with the decision. He thought about all the hiding he'd done, all the energy spent maintaining his invisibility. He thought about the young men who had come to the gym after hearing about Tommy, about Carmen struggling with her guilt, about Redmond facing her father's death without the emotional tools to process it. Maybe it was time to stop hiding. Maybe it was time to use his story, painful as it was, to help others avoid his mistakes. He opened the laptop again and began typing Mr. Yamamoto. "I accept your invitation to speak at the symposium. However, I have conditions. I will not glorify violence or my past actions. I will not participate in any promotional activities that treat combat sports as entertainment rather than the serious and potentially deadly activity it is. And I will need assurance that my presentation will focus on prevention and safety, not sensationalism. If these terms are acceptable, I will share my story in the hope that it might prevent another tragedy like the one I caused. Sincerely, Wes Dalton." He hit send before he could change his mind, then closed the laptop and tried to sleep. But sleep wouldn't come. Instead, he found himself thinking about transformation, about how people could change if given the chance and the right guidance. He thought about Riley growing from a soldier into a teacher, about Carmen confronting her guilt and seeking to become better, about Redmond allowing vulnerability into her life as her father faced death. The next morning was Sunday, typically a quiet day for Wes and Lily. They usually went to the park, maybe got ice cream, did normal father-daughter things. But this Sunday was different. When Wes came downstairs, he found Lily already dressed and waiting at the kitchen table with a serious expression. "Dad, we need to talk," she said, sounding far older than her almost 12 years. Wes felt his stomach drop. "What about sweetheart?" "About you," she said simply. "About who you really are." "I don't understand." Lily pulled out her tablet and showed him the screen. It was a YouTube video, grainy and old, showing a much younger Wes in a fighting ring. The title read, "Underground Legend, The Ghost of Phoenix." "Sophie's older brother found this," Lily explained. "He recognized you from when you picked me up at their house. He showed Sophie, and Sophie showed me. I've watched it 6 times. Wes sat down heavily, his legs suddenly unable to support him. This was it. The moment he dreaded for years. "I know you fought people, Dad," Lily continued. "I know someone died. I looked that up too. And I know you stopped fighting after your first daughter died. Am I right?" Wes could only nod, words failing him completely. "Why didn't you tell me?" Lily asked, and there was hurt in her voice now. "Did you think I couldn't handle it? Did you think I'd stop loving you?" "I thought," Wes started, then had to clear his throat and try again. "I thought you deserved a father you could be proud of. Proud. Not someone who had done terrible things." "But you stopped," Lily said. "You changed. You became the dad who makes pancakes and never misses my school plays and works hard to take care of us. Isn't that something to be proud of?" Wes felt tears streaming down his face. "How are you so wise?" "I had a good teacher," Lily said, coming around the table to hug him. "You taught me that people make mistakes, that what matters is what we do after we fall down. You fell down, Dad, but you got back up. You became better." They held each other for a long moment, years of hidden truth finally in the open. "There's something else," Lily said, pulling back slightly. "I want you to teach me. Teach you what you know. Not the violent parts, but the control, the discipline, the strength to walk away even when you could fight. I want to learn to be strong like you." "Like me?" Wes laughed bitterly. "Lily, I'm not." "You are exactly who I think you are," Lily interrupted. "You're my dad. You're someone who made mistakes and owned them. You're someone who chooses every day to be better than you were yesterday. That's the kind of strong I want to be." Wes looked at his daughter, really looked at her, and saw not the little girl he'd been trying to protect, but a young woman already forming her own understanding of strength and character. She had seen him at his most vulnerable and chosen to love him, not despite his flaws, but because of how he'd worked to overcome them. "Okay," he said finally. "We'll start tomorrow, but we do this my way. It's not about fighting. It's about choosing not to fight," Lily finished. "I know, Dad. I've been listening." That afternoon they went to the park as usual, but everything felt different. The secret that had weighed Wes down for years was gone, replaced by something lighter but more complex. As they walked, Lily asked questions about his past, and he answered as honestly as he could, neither glorifying nor overly condemning his younger self. "Were you good?" she asked at one point. "At fighting, I mean." "I was very good," Wes admitted. "But being good at something doesn't make it worth doing. Private Moore says you're teaching her and some others. Is that true?" "Yes. They wanted to learn about control, about choosing restraint over aggression." "Can I meet them sometime, the soldiers you're teaching?" Wes thought about it. His two worlds were already colliding. Perhaps it was time to stop trying to keep them separate. "There's someone I'd like you to meet first," he said. "Someone who helped me become who I am now. His name was Chen, and he owned a gym." As he began telling Lily about Chen, about the man who had tried to save him from himself, Wes felt something shift inside him. The compartments he'd built to contain different parts of his life were breaking down, and instead of feeling exposed, he felt integrated whole in a way he hadn't been since Emma's death. That evening, Riley called to ask about the next training session. Bring everyone, Wes said, everyone who wants to learn. And Riley, I told Lily, about everything. There was a pause. How did she take it? Better than I deserved? She wants to learn. She wants to be strong, she says, like me. He laughed at the absurdity of it. She thinks I'm strong. You are strong, Wes, stronger than you know. Strength isn't about never falling down. It's about getting back up, Wes finished. Lily said the same thing. Smart kid. Wonder where she gets it from. After the call, Wes found himself in the basement again, but this time he wasn't alone. Lily stood beside him, looking at the heavy bag with curious eyes. Is this where you practice? She asked. This is where I remember, Wes corrected, where I remind myself of what I was and choose to be something different. Can you show me something? Just one thing. Wes considered, then nodded. He approached the bag, slowly centering himself. Then with controlled precision, he demonstrated a combination that was beautiful in its economy of motion. Not aggressive, not violent, but powerful in its restraint. Wow, Lily breathed. That was like dancing. Fighting and dancing aren't so different, Wes said. Both are about rhythm balance, understanding your partner. The difference is intent. Dad, I'm proud of you. Not for being able to fight, but for choosing not to. That's real strength. As they headed back upstairs, Wes's phone buzzed with a response from Yamamoto accepting his conditions for the symposium. Another step toward the light, toward owning his story completely. Dad, Lily said as they prepared for bed. That symposium thing you mentioned on the phone. Are you going to do it? I think so. It might help prevent other people from making my mistakes. Can I come with you? The request surprised him. Why would you want to? Because I want to understand all of you, not just the parts you show me. And because I want to be there to support you. That's what family does, right? Wes hugged his daughter tightly, marveling at her courage and wisdom. That's exactly what family does. The morning of Lily's 12th birthday arrived with unexpected spring warmth, sunlight streaming through the kitchen windows as Wes prepared her favorite breakfast. Chocolate chip pancakes with whipped cream, a tradition Sarah had started, and one he'd maintained religiously since her passing. Lily came downstairs still in her pajamas, her face brightening at the sight of the birthday spread. Happy birthday, sweetheart, Wes said, pulling her into a hug that she returned fiercely. Thanks, Dad. This looks amazing. She settled at the table, then looked at him with those perceptive eyes. You seem different lately. Lighter, somehow. Do I? Wes sat across from her with his coffee. Maybe it's because I don't have to hide anymore. Secrets are heavy things, Lily. Carrying them changes how you move through the world. Is that why you're going to that symposium, to stop carrying secrets? Partly, but mostly to help others avoid creating secrets they'll have to carry. Before Lily could respond, there was a knock at the door. Wes opened it to find Riley standing there with a wrapped gift, but she wasn't alone. Behind her stood Carmen, Diana Chen, Jessica Park, and surprisingly, Patricia Redmond out of uniform. We hope we're not intruding, Riley said. We wanted to wish Lily a happy birthday. Lily appeared behind Wes, her eyes widening. The soldiers from my school. Dad, you didn't tell me they were coming. I didn't know, Wes said, looking at Riley with raised eyebrows. Surprise, Riley said with a slight smile. We brought presents and offers. They gathered in the small living room, the elite Commandos looking somewhat out of place among the family photos and Lily's school artwork. Each had brought a gift thoughtfully chosen. Riley's was a journal with For Your Thoughts and Dreams embossed on the cover. Carmen had brought a set of resistance bands for training. Diana offered a book about famous women warriors throughout history. Jessica's gift was a charm bracelet with a small silver boxing glove charm. Redmond surprisingly presented a framed photo from the school assembly showing Lily asking her question with intense concentration. This is too much, Wes protested, but Lily was already overwhelmed with gratitude, thanking each woman personally. There's more, Riley said. Lily, we'd like to officially invite you to join our youth self-defense program at the community center. But not as a regular student. We want you to be our junior assistant instructor. Lily's mouth fell open. But I don't know anything about fighting. That's exactly why we want you, Redmond interjected. You'll be learning alongside the other kids, but you'll also help us understand how to teach children who've never been exposed to violence. Your questions, your perspective, they'll make us better teachers. Can I, Dad? Lily turned to Wes, her excitement barely contained. If it's what you want, Wes said carefully. But you follow their rules, and if at any point you feel uncomfortable, I'll speak up, Lily promised, just like you taught me. As the women chatted with Lily, showing her basic stances and explaining the program, Wes pulled Riley aside. This is very generous, but why? Because she's your daughter, Riley said simply. And because in that gymnasium, when you could have humiliated us, you chose to teach us instead. This is our way of honoring that choice. Plus, Lily really will help us. We're trained to teach soldiers, not children. Her perspective will be invaluable. The gathering was interrupted by another knock. This time it was 3 of the young men from Tommy's crew who had confronted them at the gym weeks ago. They stood awkwardly at the door, cleaned up and without their colors. Mr. Dalton, the leader who Wes now knew was called Marcus, said nervously, we wanted to take you up on your offer about training, if it's still available. Wes looked at the young men, then back at his living room full of elite female commandos, his daughters surrounded by warriors who had become something like family. The collision of worlds was complete. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 5 a.m. sharp. Don't be late. Yes, sir, and happy birthday to your daughter. After they left, Carmen asked, you're teaching gang members now, I'm teaching young men who are looking for a better way, Wes corrected. Same as I'm teaching you. We're soldiers, not street thugs, Jessica protested. You're all people who've been taught that violence solves problems, Wes said evenly. The only difference is who gave you permission to be violent and who you're allowed to be violent toward. The lessons are the same: how to be strong without being destructive, how to protect without destroying. That afternoon, after the soldiers had left and Lily was trying on her new training gear, Wes received a call that changed everything. It was from a doctor at Memorial Hospital. Mr. Dalton, I'm calling about Chen Wu. You're listed as his emergency contact. Wes's heart stopped. Is he okay? He's had a massive stroke. He's stable but unconscious. We found your contact information in his wallet. Can you come? Wes looked at Lily, who was shadowboxing in the mirror with the enthusiasm only a 12-year-old could muster. Lily, we need to go to the hospital. Mr. Chen is sick. The man who owned the gym, the one you told me about. Yes, he's very sick. They drove in silence, Lily seeming to understand the gravity of the situation. At the hospital, they found Chen in the ICU machines monitoring his vital signs, his once powerful frame looking small and fragile in the hospital bed. Is he going to die? Lily asked quietly. I don't know, sweetheart. A nurse approached them. Are you family? The closest thing he has to it, Wes replied. Chen never married, never had kids. The gym was his family. He's been asking for someone named Wes when he's conscious. Is that you? Wes nodded, moving closer to the bed. Chen's eyes fluttered open, focusing with difficulty. Wes, he whispered, his voice barely audible. You came. Of course I came. Save your strength. No. Chen struggled to speak. Need to tell you. The gym. It's yours. Papers are with my lawyer. Always meant for you to have it. Chen, don't listen. Chen's grip on Wes's hand was surprisingly strong. You think you failed because someone died, but you succeeded because you stopped. You became what I always hoped you could be. A teacher, a father, a good man. His eyes shifted to Lily. Your daughter. Yes. Lily, this is Mr. Chen. He saved my life once. He saved himself, Chen corrected weakly. I just held the door open. He studied Lily's face. She has your spirit, but softer, better. Teach her well. I will, Wes promised. Chen closed his eyes, his breathing labored. The gym. Use it. Not for fighting, for teaching, for healing. Make it what it should have been. Over the next 3 days, Wes and Lily took turns sitting with Chen. The old man drifted in and out of consciousness, sometimes talking about fights from decades past, sometimes mistaking Wes for fighters long dead. Riley and the other commandos visited, having heard about Chen's condition. Even Marcus and the other young men came standing awkwardly in the hospital corridor, unsure if they had the right to be there. On the third night, Chen woke with unusual clarity. Wes was alone with him, Lily, having fallen asleep in the waiting room. "Wes," Chen said, his voice stronger than it had been in days. "I need to confess something. Save your energy." "No, listen, Phoenix. The fight where the young man died. I knew you weren't ready, knew you were too angry, too hurt from Emma's death. But I let you fight anyway because the money was good and I thought I could control it. His death is on me too." Wes felt tears burning his eyes. "Chen, no. I made the choice to throw that punch. And I made the choice to put you in that ring. We both carry it. But look what we did with that weight. You became someone Emma would be proud of. I kept the gym open for kids like Marcus, gave them somewhere to go besides the streets. Bad choices can lead to good outcomes if we let them teach us." Chen reached out with a trembling hand, touching Wes's face. "You were the son I never had. Stubborn, angry, broken, but mine. Watching you rebuild yourself, watching you become a father, it was my greatest joy. Chen, please, promise me." Chen's grip tightened. "Promise me you'll use the gym. Not to create fighters, but to create people who choose not to fight. Promise me you'll teach them what I couldn't teach you in time." "I promise," Wes whispered. Chen smiled, a peaceful expression settling over his weathered features. "Good. Now go get your daughter. Take her home. Chen's boxing will be there tomorrow and the next day and all the days after. Make it something beautiful." Chen Wu died that night at 2:47 a.m., passing quietly while Wes and Lily held his hands. His last words were about a fight from 1982 where he'd knocked out a heavyweight champion with a lucky punch, a story Wes had heard 100 times but listened to one last time with fresh appreciation. The funeral was held at Chen's boxing, the only place that made sense. The gym filled with people from all walks of Chen's life. Former fighters, current trainers, kids from the neighborhood who'd learned discipline within those walls, business owners who remembered when Chen would chase drug dealers from the corner. Wes stood to speak, Lily beside him for support. "Chen Wu saved my life," he began, his voice carrying through the packed gym. "Not in some dramatic way, not by pulling me from a burning building or stopping a bullet. He saved me by seeing who I could be when I could only see who I was. He gave me a place to be angry safely, then taught me how to let that anger go." He looked at the assembled crowd, seeing his past and future mingled together. The Commandos were there, Marcus and his friends. Other fighters he'd known in his previous life. Even Sergeant Major Redmond's dying father in a wheelchair, insisting on paying respects to a fellow warrior. "Chen left me this gym," Wes continued. "Not to me alone, but to all of us. He wanted it to become something more than a place where people learn to hurt each other. He wanted it to be a place where people learn to heal, to choose strength over violence, compassion over conquest." He paused, feeling Lily's hand slip into his. "Starting next week, Chen's boxing will reopen, not as a fight gym, but as a community center. We'll teach self-defense, yes, but more importantly, we'll teach self-control. We'll teach the hardest lesson Chen ever taught me, that the strongest person in any room is often the one who chooses not to fight." After the service, as people mingled and shared Chen stories, Riley approached Wes. "That was beautiful," she said. "Chen would be proud." "I hope so. I'm terrified, honestly. Running a gym, being responsible for teaching others. What if I fail?" "Then you'll learn from it and do better," Riley said simply. "Just like you taught us." Patricia Redmond wheeled her father over. The old man was gaunt, clearly in his final weeks, but his eyes were sharp and alert. "You're the janitor," he said, his voice raspy but amused. "The one who humbled my daughter's entire unit." "Dad?" Patricia protested. "Quiet, Patty. Let me talk to the man." He studied Wes carefully. "I've been fighting my whole life. Fought in 3 wars, countless operations. Thought I knew what strength was. Then Patty told me about you, about what you did in that demonstration. Choosing not to destroy when you could have. That's something I never learned." He reached out a shaking hand, which Wes took gently. "I'm dying," the old man said bluntly. "Couple weeks, maybe less. I've been angry about it, fighting it like it was an enemy that could be defeated. But listening to you talk about your friend, about choosing what kind of strong to be, maybe I need to learn how to be strong enough to let go. It's the hardest fight there is, Wes said softly, but you don't have to fight it alone. Over the following week, Wes threw himself into preparing the gym for its new incarnation. Lily helped every day after school painting walls and organizing equipment. The Commandos volunteered their off-duty time, with Carmen proving surprisingly talented at interior design and Diana setting up a computer system for scheduling classes. Marcus and his crew showed up consistently, their initial skepticism giving way to genuine enthusiasm as they helped transform the space. One afternoon, Marcus approached Wes privately. "Mr. D, I got to tell you something. That day we came here to rob you, Tommy didn't send us. He's been dead for 2 years, killed in prison. We just used his name because we thought it would mean something." Wes absorbed this information. "Why tell me now?" "Because you trusted us when you had no reason to. Gave us a chance when everyone else saw us as lost causes. That deserves truth. We all deserve chances, Marcus. Sometimes we just need someone to offer them." 3 days before the gym's official reopening, Yamamoto called about the symposium. "Mr. Dalton, we've had tremendous interest in your presentation. Would you consider expanding it? Perhaps bringing someone who represents the positive transformation possible after tragedy?" Wes looked at Riley, who was teaching Lily a basic defensive stance while Carmen spotted them. "I might have someone in mind," he said. That evening, as they cleaned up after training, Wes asked Riley if she'd consider joining him at the symposium. "You want me to speak about what I haven't killed anyone in the ring?" "No, but you've killed in combat and found a way to live with it. You've transformed from a soldier who follows orders to a teacher who helps others think before they act. Your story is just as important as mine." Riley was quiet for a moment, watching Lily practice her forms with determined concentration. "If you think it would help," she said finally, "then yes." The night before the gym's reopening, Wes couldn't sleep. He found himself in the basement, not training, but simply sitting in the darkness, thinking about the journey that had brought him here. From fighter to killer to janitor to teacher. Each transformation had cost him something, but had given him something in return. Lily found him there at midnight, unable to sleep either. "Nervous about tomorrow?" she asked, sitting beside him. "Terrified," Wes admitted. "What if no one comes? What if I'm not good enough to teach what Chen wanted me to teach?" "Dad," Lily said, taking his hand, "remember what you told me about Mom? How she said everyone deserved a second chance at redemption. This is yours. Not redemption for what happened in Phoenix. You've already earned that by changing. This is redemption for all the years you hid all the people you could have helped, but didn't because you were afraid. When did you become so wise? I had good teachers. You and Mom, even if I only knew her for a little while. And now Riley and the others. Even Mr. Chen in the time I knew him. All of you teaching me the same thing in different ways, that strength isn't about being powerful. It's about choosing how to use whatever power you have." The reopening of Chen's boxing drew more people than the building could hold. The mayor came, having heard about the transformation of a potential gang recruiting ground into a community resource. Local news stations set up cameras interested in the story of redemption and renewal. But more importantly, the neighborhood came. Parents bringing children who needed to learn confidence. Teenagers looking for belonging that didn't involve violence. Adults who wanted to feel safer in their own bodies. Former fighters paying respects to Chen's memory by supporting his vision. Wes stood in the center of the main training area, the same spot where he'd first confronted his demons under Chen's watchful eye. The crowd quieted as he prepared to speak. "Chen Wu believed that everyone deserves a chance to become better than they were yesterday," he began. "This gym is his legacy, but it's also our opportunity. Here we won't just teach you how to throw a punch. We'll teach you when not to throw one. We won't just make you physically stronger. We'll help you find the strength to walk away from unnecessary conflicts." He gestured to the people around him, Riley and the Commandos, Marcus and his transformed crew Lily, standing proudly beside the new youth training area. "Everyone here has a story of transformation, of choosing to be different to be better. Some of us have done things we regret, things that can never be undone. But we've learned that the past doesn't have to define the future. Every day we get to choose who we want to be. He paused, seeing nods of understanding throughout the crowd. Chen's boxing is open to everyone, regardless of age, background, or ability to pay. We'll have traditional martial arts classes, self-defense workshops, meditation sessions, and conflict resolution training. But more than that, we'll have a community, a place where strength is measured not by how hard you can hit, but by how much you can help others rise. The crowd erupted in applause. As people signed up for classes and explored the renovated space, Wes noticed a familiar figure in the doorway. The young man from Phoenix, the one he'd killed, seemed to stand there for a moment, not as an accusation, but as an acknowledgement. Then the image faded, replaced by excited children eager to start their first lesson. Riley appeared at his side. "You did it," she said. "Chen would be so proud." "We did it," Wes corrected. "All of us." As the day progressed, classes began. Lily assisted Riley with the children's group, her natural empathy helping scared kids feel safe. Marcus worked with teenagers, his street credibility giving him unique authority. The Commandos rotated through various sessions, each bringing their expertise while learning to teach with compassion rather than just competence. Patricia Redmond approached Wes during a break. "My father passed this morning," she said quietly, peacefully. "He wanted me to tell you something." Wes waited, seeing the grief and peace warring in her eyes. "He said to thank you. That conversation at Chen's funeral about being strong enough to let go, it changed his last days. Instead of fighting and raging, he spent them telling stories, saying goodbye, making peace. He died holding my hand, smiling at a memory of my mother. That's the gift you gave him, the gift of a good death." "I'm sorry for your loss," Wes said, meaning it deeply. "Don't be sorry, be proud. You helped him find dignity in his final battle. That's what this place is really about, isn't it? Finding dignity in our struggles, whatever they are." That evening, after the crowds had gone and the gym was quiet, Wes stood with Lily in the main training room. The walls were covered with photos Chen and his prime current students already making progress, inspirational quotes about strength and choice. "Dad," Lily said, "I want to add something." She pulled out a marker and wrote on the dedication wall they'd created for Chen. "True strength is not measured by how hard you hit, but by how much you choose not to." "That's perfect," Wes said, pulling her close. "It's what you taught me, what you're teaching everyone." As they prepared to leave, Wes's phone buzzed with a message from Yamamoto about the symposium. They'd added his presentation as the keynote with Riley as co-presenter. The title they'd given it made him smile, "The Hardest Fight Choosing Humanity Over Victory." "You ready for that?" Lily asked, reading over his shoulder. "No," Wes admitted, "but I'll do it anyway. Sometimes the things that scare us most are the things most worth doing. Like opening this gym. Like telling you the truth about my past. Like choosing every day to be better than I was the day before." They walked out together, turning off lights as they went. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new students, new opportunities to teach and learn. The ghosts of Wes's past would always be there, but they no longer haunted him. Instead, they had become teachers, reminders of the cost of uncontrolled violence and the value of chosen peace. As they drove home, Lily asked, "Dad, do you think Mom and Emma can see us? See what we're doing?" Wes thought about it, about Sarah's unwavering faith in second chances, about Emma's fierce spirit, even as cancer consumed her small body. "I think they can," he said finally, "and I think they're proud." "I think so too. And Mr. Chen, he's probably up there telling everyone about that fight in 1982. Wes laughed, the sound filling the car with warmth. "Definitely, and probably claiming the gym was his idea all along. Wasn't it? Maybe. Chen always saw further than the rest of us. Maybe he knew all along that the gym would become this, that I would become this. Maybe that's why he held on so long to make sure the transformation was complete. Or maybe," Lily said with the wisdom that continued to surprise him, "he just believed in you the way you believe in all those people who came today. Sometimes faith is enough to change everything." As they pulled into their driveway, Wes saw Riley's car parked outside. She got out as they approached, holding a folder. "These came for you, Mas," she said, handing him the papers. "From Chen's lawyer? The deed to the gym officially transferred. But there's more. Wes opened the folder, finding not just the deed, but a letter in Chen's shaky handwriting dated just a week before his stroke. Wes, if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and the gym is yours. But it was always yours from the moment you walked in, broken and angry and desperate to feel something other than pain. I kept it running all these years, not for the fighters who came and went, but for you to come back to when you were ready. You think you failed me when that boy died in Phoenix. The truth is, I failed you by not protecting you from yourself. But we both learned from that failure. We both became better. The gym is no longer about creating fighters. It's about creating people who choose not to fight unless absolutely necessary. You've already started this work without realizing it. Every time you chose to push that mop instead of throwing punches. Every time you showed mercy when you could have chosen violence, you were teaching the most important lesson the gym could offer. Your daughter Lily came to see me a month ago. You didn't know. She wanted to understand who you really were, why you carried such sadness. I told her the truth, that you were the strongest man I'd ever known, not because of your fists, but because of your heart. She said she already knew that. Use the gym to teach others what cost us so much to learn. Make it a place where strength serves peace, where power protects rather than destroys. Make it what I always dreamed it could be, but didn't know how to create. You were never just a fighter, Wes. You were always a teacher. Now go teach, with love and respect, Chen. Wes stood in his driveway, tears streaming down his face, the letter trembling in his hands. Lily hugged him from one side, Riley from the other, and for a moment the weight of years lifted entirely. He knew, Wes whispered. He knew all along. Of course he did, Lily said softly. He loved you. Love always knows. The Las Vegas Convention Center loomed before them like a monument to everything Wes had once been and fought to leave behind. 3 months had passed since Chen's death, and the gym's reopening, 3 months of teaching, learning, and slowly building something beautiful from the ashes of old pain. Now standing outside the venue, where he would share his darkest moment with hundreds of strangers, Wes felt the familiar urge to run. You don't have to do this, Riley said quietly beside him. She wore a simple black suit, professional, but understated her military bearing, evident even in civilian clothes. Yes, I do, Wes replied, adjusting his tie with hands that wanted to shake. Every young fighter in there thinks they're invincible, just like I did. If my story saves even one of them from making my mistake... Lily took his other hand, squeezing gently. At 12, she had insisted on coming, arguing that facing hard truths together was what family did. You're going to be amazing, Dad. You're going to help people. They entered through the speaker's entrance, bypassing the crowds of young fighters, trainers, and promoters filling the main lobby. Yamamoto met them, his expression grave but welcoming. Mr. Dalton, Private Moore, young Miss Dalton, thank you for coming. Your presentation has generated significant interest. We've had to move it to the main auditorium. How many people? Wes asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know. 800 registered with overflow viewing in secondary rooms. Your story has touched a nerve in the combat sports community. The death in Phoenix remains one of the most discussed tragedies in underground fighting history. Wes felt his chest tighten, but Lily's presence beside him kept him grounded. They were led to a green room where other speakers were preparing. Most were famous fighters or trainers, men and women who had built careers on violence refined into sport. They looked at Wes with a mixture of curiosity and recognition. Some knew his name. Others just sensed a kindred spirit who had walked away from their world. An hour before the presentation, there was a knock on the door. Marcus entered dressed in the best clothes Wes had ever seen him wear, followed by Carmen, Diana, Jessica, and Patricia Redmond. What are you all doing here? Riley asked, surprised. Supporting family, Carmen said simply. You two are about to bare your souls to help others. You shouldn't have to do that alone. Marcus stepped forward, clearly nervous but determined. Mr. D, I wanted you to know 3 of my boys enrolled in community college this week. They said if you could change, if you could go from what you were to what you are, then they could too. You're not just teaching us to fight better, you're teaching us to live better. Patricia Redmond, still adjusting to life after her father's death, added, My unit's entire approach to combat training has changed since that day in the gymnasium. We've incorporated your teachings about restraint and choice into our protocols. The brass is noticing fewer civilian casualties, better mission outcomes. What you're doing matters, Wes." The support strengthened him, but as the time approached, Wes found himself in the bathroom, staring at his reflection and seeing the ghost of the angry young man who had killed without meaning to. "He's still in there, isn't he?" Riley's voice came from behind him. She had followed him, understanding his need for a moment, but not wanting him to face it alone. "The fighter. The one who lost control." "Always," Wes admitted. "Every day I look in the mirror, I see him. But now I also see who I chose to become despite him." "Because of him," Riley corrected. "Your pain became your purpose." That's what we're going to tell them, isn't it? That our worst moments don't have to define us, but they can refine us if we let them. They walked to the auditorium together, Lily joining them at the stage entrance. The space was packed a sea of faces, both young and old, all connected by their relationship with violence as sport, as profession, as identity. Wes saw himself in so many of them, the young fighters hungry for glory, the older ones bearing scars, both visible and hidden, the trainers who enabled and tried to protect in equal measure. Yamamoto introduced them, providing brief context without sensationalism. Then Wes stood at the podium, the microphone waiting, 800 people silent and expectant. "My name is Wes Dalton." He began, his voice steadier than he'd expected. 8 years ago I killed a man with my bare hands. His name was Miguel Reyes. He was 23 years old, had a girlfriend who was pregnant and parents who still visit his grave every Sunday. I know this because I've watched them, though they don't know who I am. The auditorium was absolutely silent. Even breathing seemed to have stopped. "I didn't mean to kill him," Wes continued. "But that doesn't matter. Intent without control is just another form of recklessness. I hit him with everything I had because I was angry not at him, but at the world, at God, at the cancer that had taken my daughter Emma when she was 7 years old. Miguel paid the price for my pain, and his death is a weight I'll carry forever." He looked at Lily in the front row, drawing strength from her encouraging nod. "For years after I hid, became a janitor, pushed a mop, tried to disappear. I thought if I made myself small enough, harmless enough, I could atone for what I'd done. But hiding isn't healing. Running from who you were doesn't help you become who you should be." He gestured to Riley, who joined him at the podium. "This is Private First Class Riley Moore," Wes said. "She's an elite soldier trained to eliminate threats with maximum efficiency. Riley, tell them your story." Riley's voice was clear and unwavering as she spoke. 2 years ago, I killed a 16-year-old boy in Afghanistan. He was holding what I thought was a rifle. It was a broom. He was cleaning a building we'd identified as a hostile location. I had less than a second to decide, and I decided wrong." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. "The military cleared me, called it a justified shooting given the circumstances. But justified doesn't mean right. That boy had a name, Ahmad. He had a family who depended on him. Dreams I'll never know about. A future I stole because I was trained to see threats instead of children. We're here together." Wes picked up the thread because our stories are connected by a simple truth. Violence, even controlled violence, even justified violence, has consequences that ripple far beyond the moment of impact. Every punch you throw, every fight you enter, every time you choose aggression over alternatives, you're gambling with lives. Not just your opponents, but their families, your own soul. A young fighter in the audience stood up. "So what, we should just quit? Stop fighting because someone might get hurt?" "No," Wes replied. "But you should understand what you're risking. You should train not just your body, but your mind. You should learn control before you learn destruction. And most importantly, you should understand that the hardest fight you'll ever face isn't in any ring, it's the fight to remain human when you've been trained to be a weapon." Riley took over, describing the transformation she'd undergone, the shift from soldier to teacher, from weapon to guardian. She talked about the children's self-defense classes at Chen's boxing, about teaching kids to be strong without being violent, confident without being aggressive. Real strength, she said, isn't about domination. It's about choice. The choice to help instead of hurt, to protect instead of punish, to walk away when walking away is the harder path. They alternated speaking for the next hour, weaving their stories together, showing how tragedy had led to transformation, how the worst moments of their lives had become the foundation for something better. They didn't glorify their past or wallow in guilt. They simply presented the truth of what violence cost and what choosing differently could create. When they opened for questions, hands shot up throughout the auditorium. "How do you live with the guilt?" asked a fighter who looked to be in his 30s, old enough to have his own regrets. "You don't live with it," Wes answered. "You live despite it. You wake up every day and choose to be better than you were. You use the guilt as fuel for change, not as an excuse for paralysis." "What about self-defense?" a young woman asked. "Are we supposed to just let people hurt us?" "Protecting yourself is different from seeking violence," Riley responded. "But even in self-defense, the goal should be to neutralize the threat with minimum harm. Every technique should have an off-ramp, a point where you can choose to stop if the threat diminishes." An older trainer stood up, his face weathered by decades in gyms. "I knew Chen Wu. He was a good man. Would he approve of what you've done with his gym?" Wes smiled for the first time since taking the stage. "Chen once told me that the best fighter he ever trained was the one who chose never to fight again. He said true victory was knowing you could destroy someone and choosing not to. So yes, I think he'd approve. I think he'd be proud." As the formal presentation ended and people began to approach the stage with individual questions, Wes noticed a woman standing at the back of the auditorium, older, wearing black, her face drawn with grief. Something about her posture, her presence made his blood run cold. She walked forward slowly, the crowd parting unconsciously before her. When she reached the stage, she looked up at Wes with eyes he recognized. They were Miguel's eyes, the same shape, the same color. "You're Miguel's mother," Wes said, his voice barely a whisper. "Rosa Reyes," she confirmed. "I came here because I heard you would be speaking about my son's death." The auditorium fell silent again, everyone sensing the weight of this moment. "I'm sorry," Wes began, but she held up a hand. "I didn't come for apologies," Rosa said, her voice carrying surprising strength. "I came to see the man who killed my son, to understand who you are now versus who you were then." She studied his face, then looked at Lily, who had moved closer to her father protectively. "This is your daughter." "Yes, Lily." Rosa's expression softened slightly. "She's beautiful." Miguel would have had a daughter by now. "Her name is Esperanza. Hope. Her mother chose it because even in tragedy, we must have hope." "Mrs. Reyes," Wes started again, but she continued. "I hated you for so long, wished you dead, wished you suffering, wished every horrible thing upon you. But hate is heavy, Mr. Dalton. It was killing me as surely as you killed Miguel. So I came here to see if you were worth forgiving." The entire auditorium seemed to hold its breath. "And?" Wes asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to hear the answer. "You've suffered," Rosa observed. "I can see it in your eyes. You've carried Miguel's death, haven't you? Not just as a memory, but as a weight. Every day." "Good," she said, and there was no cruelty in it, just acknowledgement. "He deserves to be carried, but I see you've done more than suffer. You've changed. You're teaching others to avoid your mistakes. That's something." She reached into her purse and pulled out a photograph, Miguel in his fighting gear, young and confident and alive. "This was taken a week before he died," she said, handing it to Wes. "He was so proud, so sure he was going to be champion. He didn't know how to be afraid, and I never taught him because I wanted him to be strong." Wes looked at the photo, seeing the young man not as the opponent he'd destroyed, but as someone's son, someone's hope. "Keep it," Rosa said. "Let it remind you that everyone who steps into a ring is more than a fighter. They're someone's child, someone's love, someone's future. Teach that to your students." She turned to leave, then paused. "Mr. Dalton, I forgive you, not for your sake, but for mine, and for Esperanza's. She deserves to grow up in a world with less hate, even if it has the same amount of pain." Rosa Reyes walked out of the auditorium with the same dignity she'd entered with, leaving Wes standing on the stage with tears streaming down his face, holding the photo of the man he'd killed. The silence that followed was profound, broken finally by slow, sparse applause that grew into something more, not celebration, but acknowledgement of a moment that had transformed everyone present. After the symposium, they gathered in a quiet restaurant away from the convention center. The Commandos, Marcus, Lily, Riley, and Wes sat around a large table processing what had just happened. "That was the bravest thing I've ever seen," Carmen said finally. "Both of you on that stage and that woman, Rosa, the courage to forgive like that." "It wasn't about forgiveness," Wes said, still holding Miguel's photo. "It was about moving forward. She didn't forgive me to absolve me. She forgave me to free herself." Marcus, who had been quiet throughout dinner, finally spoke. "Mr. D, can I ask you something? If you could go back, would you never have learned to fight at all?" Wes considered the question carefully. Fighting itself wasn't the problem. It was fighting without purpose, without control, without understanding the real consequences. "If I could go back, I'd learn to fight differently. Not to hurt, but to protect. Not to dominate, but to defend." "That's what you're teaching us now," Diana observed. "Fighting as a last resort violence as a regrettable necessity rather than a first response." Patricia Redmond raised her glass of water. "To Chen Wu, who saw the future before any of us. To transformation through tragedy. To choosing to be better." They toasted, and even Lily raised her juice glass. Understanding she was part of something larger than herself. That night in their hotel room, Lily sat on her bed watching her father stare at Miguel's photograph. "Are you going to be okay, Dad?" "I think so," Wes said slowly. "For the first time in 8 years, I think I might actually be okay. Not because I've been forgiven, but because I'm finally doing something useful with my guilt." "Mom would be proud of you," Lily said softly. "So would Emma." "How do you know about what Emma would think? You never met her?" Lily smiled with that wisdom that continued to surprise him. "Because she was your daughter, and you're a good dad. She would have been proud of who you've become, just like I am." The next morning, they prepared to leave Las Vegas, but Yamamoto intercepted them in the lobby. "Mr. Dalton, the response to your presentation has been extraordinary. We've had requests from gyms across the country asking if you'd be willing to conduct workshops on controlled combat and violence prevention. Would you consider it?" Wes looked at Riley, who nodded encouragingly. Then at Lily, who was practically bouncing with excitement at the possibility of traveling. "I'll consider it," Wes said. "But my priority is Chen's boxing and the community we're building there." "Of course. Perhaps a quarterly workshop you could bring your team, spread the message while maintaining your local focus. Send me the details. We'll see what's possible." As they drove home, the desert giving way to familiar city streets, Riley said, "You know this changes everything, right? You're not invisible anymore. People know who you are, what you did, what you're doing now." "I know," Wes acknowledged. "But maybe that's okay. Maybe hiding was just another form of running. Maybe it's time to stand in the light shadows and all." When they arrived back at Chen's boxing that evening, they found it full of people despite being officially closed. Word had somehow spread about the presentation, and students, parents, and community members had gathered to welcome them home. "We watched the live stream," one of the parents explained. "The whole thing. We wanted you to know that we're proud of you, Mr. Dalton. Proud to have you teaching our children." A teenage girl who had been taking classes for 2 months approached shyly. "Mr. Dalton, my brother wants to be a fighter, like professionally. Would you talk to him? Help him understand what that really means?" "Bring him to class," Wes said. "We'll teach him to fight, but more importantly, we'll teach him when not to." As the crowd gradually dispersed, Wes stood in the center of the gym looking at the walls covered with photos of students. Inspirational quotes, and now in a new frame, Miguel Reyes's picture with a simple caption, "Remember the cost." Riley stood beside him, their shoulders touching. "So what now?" "Now we continue," Wes said. "We teach. We learn. We help people become stronger in ways that matter." "And us?" Riley asked the question carrying weight beyond the professional. Wes looked at her. Really looked at her, seeing not just the soldier or the student, but the woman who had walked beside him through his journey back to the light. "We continue too," he said softly. "Whatever that means, however that looks, we continue." Lily appeared beside them, having changed into her training clothes. "Are we doing evening class or not, Marcus? And the guys are waiting." Wes smiled, pulled from the heavy moment by his daughter's practical energy. "We're doing class. Riley, you want to help me demonstrate the new defensive sequences?" "Always," Riley replied. As students filed in for the evening session, Wes felt something shift in his chest, a loosening of bonds he'd wrapped around himself for protection. He wasn't the angry fighter anymore. He wasn't the broken father hiding in janitor's clothing. He wasn't even just the teacher trying to atone for past sins. He was all of those things, and none of them. He was simply Wes Dalton, a man who had fallen as far as a person could fall and chosen to climb back up, not to his former height, but to something different, something better. He was a father, a teacher, a friend, a man still learning how to transform pain into purpose. The evening class began with meditation, as all classes now did. Wes led them through breathing exercises designed to create space between impulse and action to find the pause where choice lived. Remember, he said, his voice carrying through the gym, every technique you learn here is a tool. Whether that tool builds or destroys depends entirely on how you choose to use it. We're not creating fighters. We're creating people who happen to know how to fight but choose not to unless absolutely necessary. As he watched his students, former gang members learning discipline, soldiers learning restraint, children learning confidence, adults learning that strength came in many forms. Wes understood that Chen's dream had finally been realized. The gym was no longer a place where people learned to hurt each other. It had become a place where people learned to heal, to choose to be more than their worst impulses. Marcus was working with a new student, patiently showing him the same basic stance over and over, exhibiting a patience he'd never had before his transformation. Carmen was helping a middle-aged woman overcome her fear of confrontation through controlled exercises. Patricia Redmond, on leave from the military, was teaching meditation to a group of teenagers who hung on her every word. And in the corner, Lily and Riley worked together on a complex defensive sequence, the 12-year-old daughter of a former killer learning from an elite soldier how to protect without destroying, how to be strong without being violent. This was redemption, Wes realized. Not erasure of the past, but transformation of it into something useful. Miguel Reyes was still dead. That would never change. But his death had led to this, a place where others might learn to avoid the tragedy that had destroyed 2 lives that night in Phoenix. "Dad," Lily called out, "show everyone that combination you taught me yesterday, the one that's all about redirecting energy." Wes moved to the center of the mat, and his students gathered around. As he began to demonstrate, he caught sight of himself in the mirror. The man looking back was older, marked by loss and weighted by responsibility. But he was also lighter somehow, no longer hiding, no longer running. "The key to this technique," he explained as he moved, "is understanding that your opponent's energy doesn't have to be met with opposing force. It can be redirected, transformed, even dispersed. Just like pain doesn't have to be met with more pain. It can be transformed into understanding, into compassion, into growth." As he taught, Wes felt Chen's presence in the gym not as a ghost, but as a legacy alive in every lesson, every choice to be better, every young person who learned that true strength had nothing to do with domination and everything to do with choice. The class continued late into the evening, no one wanting to leave the sanctuary they'd created together. As the last student finally departed and they began cleaning up, Wes found himself standing before Miguel's photo. "I'll carry you," he whispered to the image. "Always. But I'll carry you forward not as a weight that holds me down, but as a reminder of why this work matters." Riley appeared beside him, having overheard. "That's all any of us can do with our ghosts. Carry them forward, transform them into something that helps rather than haunts." "When did you become so wise?" Wes asked, echoing his frequent question to Lily. "I had a good teacher," Riley replied. "He showed me that the hardest fights are the ones we have with ourselves, and that choosing peace when you're capable of war is the greatest victory of all." As they turned off the lights and locked up, Lily took both their hands, linking the 3 of them as they walked to the car. Above them, the stars were visible, despite the city lights, each one a distant fire burning in the darkness. "Mom would have liked this," Lily said suddenly. "All of it. The gym, the teaching, the way you've both found each other through helping others." Wes and Riley exchanged glances over her head, acknowledging what Lily had seen before they'd fully admitted it to themselves. They were more than teacher and student now, more than friends, united by shared purpose. They were something new, something still forming, something that had grown from the soil of tragedy but bloomed into possibility. Yes, Wes agreed, squeezing both their hands. Sarah would have loved this. She always believed in second chances and redemption through action rather than words. She would have been proud. She is proud, Lily corrected, with the certainty only a child could possess. Wherever she is, she's proud. And so is Emma. And Mr. Chen, and maybe even Miguel in his own way. Because look what his death created, not more violence, but less. Not more anger, but understanding. That's the best memorial anyone could have. As they drove home through streets that had once seemed full of threat and judgment, but now felt like Community Wes understood that his journey wasn't ending but transforming into something new. The symposium had been a watershed moment. Rose's forgiveness, a gift he hadn't earned but would honor, and the gym's evolution into a true community center was Chen's dream realized. But more than that, he had found his way back to himself. Not the self he'd been before tragedy struck, but a new self forged in the crucible of loss and chosen rehabilitation. He was a father who no longer hid from his daughter, a teacher who taught from experience rather than theory, a man who had learned that strength wasn't about what you could do, but about what you chose not to do. The ghost of the angry fighter would always be with him, just as Miguel's death would always be part of his story. But ghosts could be teachers too, reminders of roads not to travel again, guides for helping others avoid the same dark paths.